Hey, fellow patriots, I'm Bree.
And I'm Blaze. Some call me Pa. It has been said that we have 4 boxes to keep ourselves free. These are the soap box, the ballot box, the jury box, and the ammo box.
And we are the 4th box. We are here to arm you with enough information, resources, and skills to take back your freedom, increase your self-sufficiency, and inspire you to join in the fight against tyranny.
Thomas Jefferson said, "Eternal vigilance is the price of liberty." Thank you for joining us and for joining in this fight.
Welcome back to the 4th box. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the 4th Box podcast. This is the week after Easter week, so we are still enjoying, I think, the remnants of the holiday there. Just being thankful, being blessed, and remembering everything that happened so many years ago. That is something very important to what we talk about here every single week. We know that we are in the midst of a spiritual war, and for me, this Easter felt more important than ever, because I do think, as I've said many times on our show, that so many people have woken up to the fact that we are in the midst of spiritual warfare, woken up to the importance of having a relationship with Jesus. So I feel that, I see that, and I think that it's an important year as we move forward, through the Easter holiday and beyond, and just kind of seeing where all of that takes us.
Yeah.
So, hey, welcome everybody.
Yeah, Resurrection Day, just this past Sunday. We recognize that as the key event established in Christianity as a faith of which we're members of the Christian faith. So it was the high holy day of the year for Christians, the resurrection of Jesus Christ coming from the tomb, the first to rise from the dead. So we look at that as a very special day, and we, as you mentioned, we're still celebrating and hopefully keeping that forefront in our thoughts as we deal with the evil in the world around us. But tonight we gather once again, where greetings go out to all of the 4th Box faithful. As always, we are so happy to be coming to you from our virtual Buckman Tavern. It's where patriots gather, after all, and I believe this is our 118th episode. That's what I got down. I could be within one way or the other, but I believe we're at 118. For those that don't remember or haven't heard, the Buckman Tavern is that old tavern up on the Lexington Green where the patriots gathered the night before, and we're coming up very quickly on April 19th. So they were gathered on April the 18th in the Buckman Tavern the night before the shot heard round the world. The shot fired on the Lexington Green that began the American Revolution. So important a historical event. So that is the history behind the Buckman Tavern. It's still up there today for anybody that wants to make a journey or is in that neck of the woods. It'd be a great stop to check that out. So as we prepare to kick off tonight, I'm raising a glass, and I have a nice golden American lager here from dear old Yingling, the oldest brewery in America, right here in Pennsylvania. And I am toasting all those who are continuing to challenge the legality and necessity of the current war. Former Arms Inspector Scott Ritter, Colonel Douglas McGuire, Andrew Napolitano, Rogan, and many other significant voices, Ron Paul, lots and lots of them out there that are really suggesting, number one, there's no constitutional authority. Number two, it's an act of aggression. And now you may have heard that they're talking about going after civilian stuff, and I think we'll talk about that a little bit further on in the show. But I'm raising my glass to all of those who are challenging this whole narrative that we're having pushed on us about the necessity of this war.
Yeah, for sure. Cheers.
Yeah. So I do have a moment in history for tonight. We're trying to as often as possible recall some of the historical events that had gone on 250 years ago in 1776. A lot of great patriots were hard at work 250 years ago fighting against the greatest military force on the face of the earth at that time, that being the British Empire and Navy, the Army and Navy, who they were dealing with. But 250 years ago this week at the fourth North Carolina Provincial Congress, beginning on April the 4th, and this thing went on for about 30 days. It was in Halifax, North Carolina. The Halifax Resolves called for total independence from Britain. It became the first full formal declaration of independence in any of the colonies. So North Carolina, that's kind of one of those facts that kind of slipped through the cracks. You don't hear of it mentioned often, but North Carolina led the charge of all the colonies when they declared through their what they called the resolves, North Carolina resolves, that they were declaring themselves independent from Great Britain. So it was North Carolina. Very, very interesting. And we'll continue to try and find some great historical references to bring up as we go along through the year. The quote for tonight: truth will ultimately prevail where there is pains to bring it to light. And that comes from George Washington. So we're going to review some of the topics that are going on right now, hot and heavy. We know the war's still going on. There's birthright citizenship discussion going on at the Supreme Court, of which the president, very first one that ever went in and sat through some of the proceedings at the Supreme Court. So there's still a lot going on, and we will find plenty to talk about as we fill our show tonight.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely just kind of running through all of the current headlines and the things that we don't see in the headlines too often again here, because there's always much to discuss. And, going off the start of this episode, just kind of talking about Resurrection Day, Easter Sunday, for me, the first thing that I feel like is the most important is the tweet that Trump tweeted on Easter Day. And I found myself feeling very annoyed by the whole thing. So just to read it, he said Tuesday will be Power Plant Day and Bridge Day, all wrapped up in one in Iran. There will be nothing like it. Open the effing strait, you crazy bastards, or you'll be living in hell. Just watch. Praise be to Allah. And I remember a couple years ago when Biden was president and they canceled one of the events that is a traditional White House event. And I don't even remember what all it entailed, but there was Christian messaging involved. And so it was canceled. And I was pretty pissed about it. I thought that was the wrong thing to do. And I believe I even talked about it on our show 2 years ago, whatever. And looking at that now, I kind of feel like that wasn't really that big of a deal comparatively. Instead, today we're participating in this illegal war that has no benefit to our country, and there's countless civilians who have been killed because of the weaponry that we've supplied and the aid that we've given. And now we're making tweets like this about, how we're raining hellfire on your country if you don't open the strait that's closed because of us. Now it's like we're in this war because we have to get the strait open. Well, it wouldn't have closed had we not been involved. The whole thing is it's such a joke. It's so disrespectful to what we're supposed to be, to the person that we, put into position. And I'm so sick of even talking about Trump, to be honest, because I'm so over it. I'm so beyond it. I'm so past it. But I know that there are people who are like rah, rah, rah about this. And I think that's so stupid because what are you cheering for? Do you even know? Are you just excited that we're, we're America, we're tough, we're brave? Like, what about all the other pieces to this puzzle and how it actually impacts you in your life? Because if you think it's not impacting your life, look around. You were promised that the cost of living was going to go down. Is it? This is the first time I've seen gas over $4 in a while, and it's not even bad where I am. It's over 6, it's over 8 in parts of the country, and it's not going to go down anytime soon. This does directly impact you, and that shouldn't even be the most important thing. If you claim yourself to be a Christian, you're celebrating Resurrection Sunday, and you're celebrating the return of our Lord, and at the same time, you're cheering the president of our country who's excited to be dropping bombs on innocent lives. I just don't see how that works.
Yeah, this as you said, just kind of really sick of the whole thing right now, and really troubled by the fact that there are still so many Trump supporters that refuse to call this out for what it is. It's illegal. It's an illegal war. It's crimes against humanity, bombing schoolhouses and civilian. These are crimes. People were Nuremberg for this. The Nuremberg trials were set up for these very type of things. But I think it goes to show you really the lack of depth when it comes to the folks in this country and who they cheerlead for. Again, if it's their chosen or preferred candidate, it doesn't matter that the guy is in complete violation of the law and everything that he promised during the campaign. We're going to continue to cheer for him. And this is exactly why we're in the position that we're in, because the political winds have not deterred him from acting like a bully on a playground. Now he is openly discussing bombing the power plants and the water desalination plants, which will really be traumatic to the whole area. And it's going to cause great hardship amongst civilian population. Hey, I know they all got to pound their chest, and we sent the special ops guys in, and I'm sure it was a well executed mission, and absolutely nothing negative to say about those guys and what they did. But we should simply not be there. And to have somewhere close to half this country still cheerleading for what we know those very same people would have been screaming from the rooftops if Biden would have done this. That is how shallow this is. If the other side would have done it, everybody who was cheering today would have been raising hell and would have been shouting from the rooftops that this is illegal. But now that it's our guy doing it, everybody is supposed to stand and clap. And I simply cannot. It's a war that he promised to keep us out of. It's a regime change that he promised to keep us out of. And now we're going after civilian targets, which makes me sick as an American to have that be the action of the leadership of this country.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's just it. I'm so frustrated by people who think that when this is your stance, you just have a problem with Trump. That's all it is. It's not. We can say more than anyone, we sat on this podcast every single week and said we got to get Trump in office. 100% don't have an issue with the guy, actually. What I have an issue with is that what we voted for is not what we got. We were sure, you can never be sure, we were pretty sure it was the best chance to return to the values that this country is supposed to represent. None of which we are doing today. None. It's not even close, actually. It's worse than the first term. I thought it was going to be better. It is not. It
is worse. It's a lot worse.
It looks far more like just any other politician. It has nothing to do with Trump. To me, he looks like he's way more of a classic political head.
So much of what we had invested our support in has been violated. And did you notice, and we talked about this a week or so ago, the whole Epstein thing, which I am pretty convinced that there is still some part of that has led to desire for us, the higher ups in this country, to get something going, to shift all the focus away from what was going on. We were obviously over the target, that now we have to get a war going, or some part of that war, because so many voices have come out and said simply that they were not imminent. There was not an imminent threat to them getting a nuclear weapon. There was not. So much of what the buildup for the necessity of this thing is being argued at the highest level by people at the highest level. And for us to go in there and just start arbitrarily bombing places when there was not clear evidence. If there was clear evidence, then that narrative could have been brought to the public, and it could have went through the channels that it is supposed to. And I would still stand opposed to getting involved in another war. I would stand very opposed, 100% opposed, to attacking civilian infrastructure, schools, bridges, universities, power plants, water treatment plants, all of that sort of stuff. That is out of bounds. And we are supposed to be standing up as the righteous ones amongst the world, pretending to be cop. We're nothing but a bully, and we shouldn't be over there. And as you mentioned, the price of gasoline and diesel fuel going up is just the beginning of the long-term effects that are going to come out of here, with the loss of the growing season, because we didn't get to put down the fertilizer that so much of comes out of that area. For all over the world, people's growing seasons are going to be adversely affected, which means somewhere in the next 6 to 18 months, there is the very distinct possibility of large-scale food scarcity issues. Talk about the prices going up. Wait till food becomes scarce, and the fuel that is needed to move this stuff around and to grow and harvest this stuff becomes more and more expensive. Things are going through the roof. And I am not too sure that is not what was intended, if that's not what was hoped for. You don't know. We have proclaimed for a very long time but we recognize, based on the verbiage that come out of these people's mouth, there is a great desire from this globalist group, this elitist group that gathers every year in a couple of different spots, have talked about global depopulation. How do we know that the war in itself and all the indirect effects are not there for that very purpose? To push those narratives forward and to make those things become a reality. And scarcity of food is going to cause more conflicts around the world. There's going to be people spilling over borders trying to find food for themselves and their families. This is going to be a nightmare, and it was completely unnecessary and undeserved that we sent our kids over there. It's just completely out of bounds.
Yeah, there's so much wrong with it. That's the thing. It's like I could pick it apart all day, but there's so many things, and the more that you resonate with some of the ideas we've discussed previously, that, like you just mentioned, that we talked about 2 weeks ago, Agenda 2030, if you know that this is the intention, if you've looked into this at all, again, these are not secret ideas. Look at how much has been right about this already. This is something they openly talk about. They need to hit these targets. This is the type of thing that sets us up to do that. In doing so, it sets we the people, we the slave class, up for complete failure. And I think that you mentioned it there a moment ago, we've hardly seen the beginning of what the fallout will be from this. And I don't know how much more it will drag on, and what the cause and effect will be as it does drag on further. But just to further reiterate the point that I made about Trump's take on it and why this is problematic to me, I'm going to also read a tweet that he shared in 2019. Didn't age well, I suppose. The United States has spent $8 trillion fighting and policing in the Middle East. Thousands of our greatest soldiers have died or been badly wounded. Millions of people have died on the other side. Going into the Middle East is the worst decision ever made. So for those people who are MAGA MAGA, Make America Great Again, and have not strayed from that mindset at all and are still such a Trump loyalist that you think anyone who disputes the war is the issue and that we are the ones who've changed our minds. We're not the ones who changed our minds. I had the same beliefs in 2019 that I do right now. I don't think we should be involved over there. I don't think it's our business. And I think the issues go far beyond that. Everything we just discussed, to name a few. So just to compare and contrast the two tweets from 2019 to now, it's such a stark contrast. And it does, as we always do, make you wonder what could be so intense going on to these people behind the scenes that they flip like this. I mean, truly, even Javier Milei was just over in Israel kissing the wall. I mean, what is going on with these few people who did stand up or attempted to stand up, looked as though they were going to be this person to kind of rise up in the populist movement against communism, against Marxism. And now they're all just falling one after the other, and they all seem to be falling in the direction of Israel. It can't be a coincidence. I mean, surely we can say it's conspiratorial to be talking about it, but I think that there are too many of these people who are doing the same thing. And it makes you have to ask the question, what is going on there?
Yeah, it's really quite obvious that somehow, some way they've been leveraged when, like you point out, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, there were very powerful statements made exactly in opposition to what we're doing today by people that are cheering it on and unfortunately have the political winds of a I'm going to just say MAGA movement that's in a stupor, that just is not recognizing you are cheering on the very things that this guy campaigned against and said he wasn't going to do. One of the pieces of good news that I seen, and it's one voice, but hopefully it's going to start resonating amongst the chamber. Ron Johnson, the senator, I believe a Wisconsin senator, has come out in opposition, took a strong stance against any bombing of civilian infrastructure. And I don't know why there isn't a whole hell of a lot more of them out there doing that, saying we're just going to pull the plug on this. There's no more funding, pull everybody back. Because I think if you listen, there are such conflicting stories coming out. Oh, we're, United States is over there just mopping them up and cleaning everything up, and they cannot compete with our stuff. And then you hear stories from the other side, and some of these voices are significant. Scott Ritter and Andrew Napolitano and Colonel Doug McGregor are saying, we've pulled weaponry from all over the world to support this effort. We have bases that are all over the Middle East that are being obliterated every time Trump opens up his mouth and says, we've wiped out all their anti-aircraft stuff. We get another plane shot down. Said, we've wiped out all their missile delivery systems. They don't have anything left. And he makes a statement like that, and they lob a couple of more missiles onto one of our bases somewhere around the Middle East. There is absolutely nothing but a huge disaster coming out of this. And honestly, it's like Russia was back in the beginning of the Ukraine thing. I completely understand the Iranians' position on this. No, we're not backing up and asking for a surrender or a ceasefire. You guys started us. You kicked us in the teeth. You wiped out school children, school buildings, bridges, and all the rest of it. And now you're trying to find a graceful way to back away from this thing. And it absolutely did not have to happen. And we just, I think part of it is the Trump personality, called a personality. He does not know how to back away from this thing, saving face. Well, guess what? I don't think there is a way. You got to just say, hey, we really went in over our head. We should not be doing this, and get the hell out. Because at the end of this, there's many voices saying that bases are all going to be closed. We have demonstrated to our partners in the Middle East that we cannot defend them. So how are they going to look to us as the lone superpower? That, I think, that is gone. And not only that, probably NATO's gone, because and I'm not going to suggest that that's a bad idea. I think NATO and the UN probably should have been done away with when the Berlin Wall came down or whatever. But anyway, I think he's got himself in a position that he don't know how to gracefully back away from, saving face, which is apparently what's most important to him, not what's doing right.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's probably fair to say. I mean, there's also, and who knows what the reason is for it, but look at all the conflicting statements. Oh yeah, it's a 3-day thing. We're in, we're out. Oh, actually, we need to send more of this. Oh, actually, we're done. We win. Oh, actually, now we need to send in ground troops. Oh, actually, never mind. We wiped them out completely. Like, it's been so back and forth, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's Trump. Like, I feel like when people hear the word Trump, you're either like, so I love the guy, I don't care what anything that you say after this, or I hate the guy, I don't care anything you say after this, as soon as you hear the word. So it doesn't matter who it is, right? The commander-in-chief of the military is sowing such confusion in the people of the country who we're at war. And I'm not saying that we are supposed to know everything that's going on, right? Like, obviously there's some level of intelligence that needs to be kept private, but at the same time, to be saying such harshly opposing statements one after the other every single day, it does make us look stupid and weak as a country, despite the fact, I mean, that we are not doing a good job of, like you said, actually, supporting and defending and protecting our true allies, which, what does any of that even mean anymore? I think when the whole first thing happened, back in whatever, was it 2 Octobers ago with the Gaza thing? And, I think I was like, wow, like the, what am I, the music festival situation in Israel. I was thinking, wow, this is going to be crazy. Like, this is one of our greatest allies, this is really serious. And ever since then, the further that we've removed ourselves from what happened there and the more that we've watched like everything transpire, the more I am just in disbelief that we as a country have tied ourselves so closely to Israel, because it wasn't since all of this started happening that we've even been able to see through that and start questioning things. So I guess that's a silver lining, because I think without having that event, a lot of people wouldn't start questioning like what is even going on there. I think, this is not something that's new. This has been going on for decades, obviously. And it's only now that people are starting to question who's really pulling the levers of control and what their motives are. So I guess that's a silver lining, but there's certainly just so much there that should be deeply, deeply concerning to the public. And instead, people are just jumping on board.
Yeah, in a way, it is a silver lining. There are people that appear to be waking up and recognizing that there are other influences that are, significant enough to change what our leadership says and does. Uh, my problem is, I think we've recognized these things before, and we stand up and shout, and then we sit back down and forget about it. And that is simply not the case. We say it every time, and eternal vigilance is the cost of liberty. We have to be after this sort of thing all the time, or the moment you turn away, the influences from around the world and or within this country are going to start directing it away from a government of, by, and for the people to a government of something else. Big business, the small group of elites, or whatever it is. But there are certainly things going on that were not done by the rules that were put in place to do it. And another point I wanted to make, I'm extremely offended by Hegseth invoking the name of Jesus Christ as part of the reason for this assault on Iran. This is so far out of bounds. This is not what the Lord came back and rose from the dead to do. It was to conquer somebody who, we feel has done something or maybe doing something, or whatever the reasons they're pretending exist. And I was very offended by Pete Hegseth. I'm starting to think less and less and less of all of these people, because they are turncoats on what they promised was going to be being done. And now, as you mentioned, boots on the ground over there is, I am absolutely 100% opposed to that. We started this thing. We've been wiping out civilian infrastructure And now we're going to send boots on the ground for what purpose? Are they going to go in there and go looking around for the yellow cake uranium or whatever it is that they're pretending to look for, like we went storming through Iraq? Is very similar footprint to this story. And it is absolutely unnecessary. And we're putting a lot of young people's lives at risk. And we're messing up global supply chains. And we're going to forever change our influence over in the Middle East. It's trashed. It's absolutely trashed right now, and it's not going to be fixed.
Yeah, I completely agree with all of that. And just to get back to the point that you made much earlier on, I really did not believe that the Epstein files would just stop being talked about. I didn't. I was so sure, I was so confident that, even a war of this grandeur would not take away from the intensity of what we saw come to light. And it was, it felt like any other news story. Every single day I see less and less people talking about it. And I can't wrap my head around the fact that that is where we're at. We can't be more lost than that. Right. we can do all these things. We can keep bombing other countries and we can be doing all of these things, but we can't be more lost than knowing that the most innocent amongst us are being treated in this way, and we're just going to sit by. I don't know how much longer until, it's apocalypse now, right? Like there just can't be that much more. How much more can we fall?
I think it's a direct reflection of the Americans' attention span. We are so enamored by the latest news loop, 24-hour news loop, and of course the media recognizes this. They know they can steer the masses, 80%. They can steer their attention simply by what they're putting on a television. So it was Epstein, and we thought we were getting close. We thought we were over the target. There was a lot of squirming starting to go on. People in other parts of the world were being arrested and placed under investigation. Nothing really happened significantly here, but the only way it was going to is if there was a continued mounting pressure from the folks. And now we got a war going and all that went away. And I don't think you're going to resurrect that amount of attention and pressure that was coming out of it pre this war. So effectively, they did, and I will always forever believe that some part of this war was a part of Epstein. Maybe the whole thing, but some part of it was a direct result of the Epstein files and the fact that people were starting to get close to being exposed. And that is when all this took place. And how are you going to rev that energy level back up? We're going to have a mess to clean up for the next 5 years or more as a result of this war. And Epstein is never going to come back to the forefront, especially with the media providing cover. That is the cover. It's the propaganda arm of the Communist Party, those trying to rule the world. It is their ability to steer the American attention span through the media. And we just lost the edge. We had a lot of momentum going in that direction, and this war took the wind right out of the sails.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know, how it's possible to put anyone in a position of power that could do anything about it at this point. The people we have in there now are, if you asked me 2 years ago, the perfect people for the job. They'll get the job done. I was sure of it. I genuinely was, and that's my mistake. But that's part of that question of just what happens. I don't think they're people who are just in truly traitors. I don't think they're people, you just spoke about Pete Hegseth, and that's spot on. Invoking the name of Jesus as you're justifying the mass murder of women and children. First of all, how did you get there? I've listened to him on podcasts before he was in this position. Seems like a very loving, intentional father. Seems like the kind of person that you would, want to be your neighbor. Like, I don't think this was the mindset of these people when they went in there. And either I'm completely crazy and off base in the judgment that I cast for them before they fell into these roles, or something so beyond the imagination happens once you get in there. And it's just, that's why we talk about the spiritual warfare component, because something is going on that is so far out of the realm of what we can sit here and speculate about.
Yeah, you're right. There's obvious changes. Everybody can see them. Some may not acknowledge them, but there are obvious changes in these people's verbiage and what they either pretended to stand for then or are pretending to stand for now. So somebody has a significant amount of influence to take people who were used to being on a national stage and proclaiming what they believed and what they were going to fight for and completely 180 degrees at and be able to do it with the same vigor. Something happened. There is absolutely no question about that. I wanted to talk, Bree, if we could, and maybe you still had a couple of remarks you wanted to make there on that. And I'm sure we're going to get back involved in this war thing a little bit, but the birthright citizenship has always been one of those cloudy issues. They claim it was addressed in the 14th Amendment. Now we're back at the Supreme Court, and if I were to bet on it, I'm not betting for a favorable ruling. Trump went down there and sat in on some of the proceedings, I suppose, to hopefully, maybe have some influence over it. I just don't have faith in the Supreme Court justices. There's nothing that's deemed constitutional about this. I think it's something that's been accepted for a long time. But oddly enough, the group that's fighting for it, for this birthright citizenship the most is the progressive liberal side of the equation. And, I was looking back through some notes and through some stories that were circulating. And the story is out there that 30 years ago, right around now, Dianne Feinstein and Harry Reid, significant leaders of the Democrat Party back 30 years ago. Harry was the leader in the Senate for a long time. Dianne Feinstein, senator out of California, significant senatorial figureheads on the Democrat side. They were speaking out about the evils of birthright citizenship. So it's just amazing. That's that attention span thing again. It's just amazing to me that many voters today were around 30 years ago and able to hear, the Feinsteins and the Reids and others talking about the problems with birthright citizenship. Now that side of the equation cheered it on, and the group's cheering for something that their leadership before was against. So the same type of underlying thing. Our attention span is so small, our depth of understanding so shallow that whatever they're telling us to cheer for today, that's what we're going to run up the pole and cheer for. It's really pathetic, and I think it has such a significant impact on why we have what we have.
Yeah, it's so true. Think about when we had Jeff Dornick on, and we've heard others talk about it too. These are not problems that either side wants to fix. They're problems that they're just going to keep lightly passing back and forth, one side to the other. And first it's the Democrats' problem, and then after a few years, when people have stopped paying attention, they make it the Republicans' problem, and they toss them back and forth. And like you've compared the population to many times, like seals are in this direction, and then over in this direction. And it's so hard to watch the mindlessness. And that's what it is. And I don't know what else there is to say about it, because no matter how many people wake up, that game is going to continue to be played until the players are pulled out of the game. And to this point, I don't see how we're going to do that. We did the best we could with the administration that's in there now. We put the people in that we thought could stop the game, and they couldn't stop it. So this is where we come back to time and time again. This is a fourth box situation. This is what we're finding ourselves in. We say it all the time. Our ancestors did a lot more for a lot less. A lot less. And we all just sit here and we just watch one insane thing happen after another. And I just don't know whatever pushes us over the edge. I don't think anything does. I think we just again, using a classic analogy here, are the frog in boiling water, and we just wait and wait and wait until it's too late, until all is lost, and Agenda 2030 has taken full hold of the global population, and we're all enslaved and in 15-minute cities, and locked in our digital prisons, essentially.
Yeah, and I think that's when that cycle we've talked about 4 or 5 different podcasts over the last couple of years. It was pointed out by Wendell or Alexander Tytler, the Scottish professor back before the time of this country's founding, had pointed out after studying the great empires down through history that people will always end up in bondage, and that's where we're headed. I would largely say we're there already. Some would disagree, but I would say if we're not in bondage already, and that means we're working for the benefit of somebody else without a choice, and I would suggest we're already there. But whether we're there or not yet, we're very close to being there. That is when people, and we've referred to younger people becoming sick of the situation that they have to bring their children up in. And then they're going to get mad dog mean about what they have been dealt. And that is when the people in bondage gain great spiritual courage. And most often through history, conflict, they win back their independence. You got to get to that bottom in that cycle where now you get some people that are aware enough to realize I am not bringing children into this world to live for the benefit of somebody else. Their labors for the rest of their life are going to be taken away by somebody else, and what's left is what all they're going to get. People are not interested in bringing children in this world to face that kind of a future. And at that point, something happens. And through gaining great spiritual courage, they win back their independence, and then the cycle begins again. Because from once you have independence, you gain prosperity. You become very prosperous, and then from prosperity, you become complacent, apathetic, dependent, and bondage. And that's the cycle. It runs, 200 to 300 years is about how that thing historically is ran, and Alexander Tytler pointed that out before, and I think this is what we can't push that ball back the hill. It's got to go through the bottom. We've been hollering from the rooftops for a long, long time about we are headed for disaster because we are following the path historically of what the other great civilizations have done, but you cannot push that ball back up the hill that way. It's got to go through the bottom and work itself back up the other side. We put a lot of effort into it. The complacency, the willingness to buy the slop that is poured into people's heads off the TV and other places they call the legacy media, the traditional news outlets, the slop that is being poured in them, and they simply cheerlead for it, and they do not feel threatened because they can still get to the mall or they can still get on their Amazon account and order a bunch of junk. But sooner or later, and this might be the trigger point with this conflict going on over there and food scarcity becoming a problem, energy costs going through the roof, and subsequently everything else going up. Inflation will be crazy. Maybe that's a spark. I don't know. I just don't see that there is a lot of energy into changing the course we're on.
Yeah, I agree, but I guess I do have, a couple counters. And the first would be that I think we, as much as our enemy in this case, knows that that is the cycle. And I suspect that every time the enemy in this case, those in power, perfect their craft a little bit. And I think they have tools at their disposal that they didn't have 200 years ago and 200 years before that to really enslave our minds. Our minds are already enslaved. That's the issue. Eventually, we will be truly enslaved to the point that you cannot deny it, I think. But people's minds are already trapped in that. And I don't know how much they had the ability to control what was happening inside people's minds 200 years and 200 years and 200 years before that. And I think those powers have strengthened so much from the enemy in this case to make the people on our side, these people who do need to go through this bondage and then come back out of it, so numb to what's happening that how long are we going to have to sit in that point of bondage? Because even in an ideal world where everyone is like, oh, okay, we need to do something, we need to take action, that's still not going to be like a 2-5 year period. It could be
Mm-hmm.
decades where you're in that period of being all the way at the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
But if the population is so lost, it's not fathomable how much time could pass before you're able to rise up out of that, which is why what we've talked about on here, and I fully believe it, is that there is no relying on that. It is not about looking towards the fact that eventually that will come. That could come 100 years from now.
Oh, yeah.
I don't want us to wait. I don't want the listeners of this podcast to wait for that day to know that they're good, they're solid, whatever happens, whatever comes, they're good. And I think that's what we all need to be doing, is what we try to talk about. We should talk about it more, especially as we see so many insane things happening around the globe. The only thing we can do is, instead of waiting for the system to change, get out of the system in every way that you can. Remove yourself from the system. And I need to do a better job of practicing what I preach. I admit, I think it's very hard to remove yourself from the system, but there are people who do it, and we should do our best to learn from them and hopefully share some of that knowledge here through the next couple weeks and months even, because I think it's the only response that we can have now. I mean, the more I watch, the more I'm sure that there is not another answer than to just get the hell out of the system. The system is broken, and the system does not care if you notice. The system will not change for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's great. Great observations. I think probably when you look back at when our founders came over here to try and get this whole experiment started, they had been living for generations under the tyranny that they had, and they finally, just started breaking away. But that wasn't just like, well, one week that things got bad and they said, let's get the hell out. No, they kept taking more and more and more tyrannical abuse from those in leadership and those that were ruling over them, just like we are here. We just keep bending down further and further and further. To your point, we're trying to shorten that window. We're trying to get people. That's what our job is here. We're trying to make this as short and painless as possible, but largely we're recognizing that we are ineffective at winning over the masses. Even though I disagree vehemently with much of what Mark Levin says, he said something that caught my attention several years ago, and he said, we have the government we want, because if the majority didn't want it, we wouldn't have it. And I expect that largely to be true. If the majority really was fed up as we are, fed up with the income tax system, just like John Whitehead said, we're not citizens, we're revenue streams. We are revenue streams for the criminals that rule it over us. John Whitehead over on the Muck Rack said that last week, wrote an article, a great piece. It is exactly right. We are nothing more than income generators for the federal government. And for those that are really running the show behind the federal government, we have to recognize that. So what we're trying to do here through the Fourth Box podcast and other podcasters around the country, we're really trying to wake people up so that we can condense that down. We spend the least amount of time as possible in the belly here, and we start winning back great spiritual courage, which takes prayer, people. One of the things that we continue to say we want to continue to promote, we got to pray. We got to pray for guidance. We got to pray for strength. We got to pray for a solution, because sitting back on our hands and waiting for somebody to ride in on a white horse and save us simply is not going to happen. That's fairy tale stuff. We have to win this back ourselves, and there's going to be a whole lot of assake that goes along with that. But we got to be willing to take that on, just like so many of those people who we look up to say we have to stop worrying about what freedom is going to cost us. It's going to cost us something. It's going to probably cost us a lot. But if we value that and we treasure that, and we want our children and our children's children to grow up with that blessing, then we got to be willing to fight for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's just it. So any other topics that you wanted to get to before we work on wrapping this thing up?
Well, the one thing I was going to say, a kind of a good note, Mike Rowe, I seen a piece by Mike Rowe, the dirty jobs guy. We got a lot of respect for Mike. He's got a lot of great stuff going on. And he has made the observation that Gen Z is ditching the pursuit of degrees and they're shifting toward the pursuit of the trades. And this is something that we have advocated for a long time. People that are learning how not everybody is cut out. Certainly there are people that need to go get a degree and to lead this country and the world forward in the advancement of sciences and all of those sorts of things. But the majority of people simply do not need to go there. They're just getting ripped off. And he's pointing out that Gen Z is now leaning heavily into following up on the trades. And that is what built this country. People that knew how to build things and to fix things. That is what made this country great and led the world in, a lot of these industrial developments, so forth. So Mike has pointed that out, that there's a lot of, and we pointed out over the last month or so, the big swing back toward Christianity. This is how we fix the problem. We get back to the basics. We get back to what made this country wealthy and powerful. That was largely the trades. Most of the people that developed the greatest inventions, scientific and otherwise, were not Harvard educated. They put their boots on, they went out and figured stuff out. And a return to faith and spirituality. I don't care what denomination you call yourself. We got to turn to the higher being that put us here in the first place and that has rose from the dead for our benefit to enjoy that eternal salvation. And we got to get on our hands and knees and pray for the strength and the guidance to get through this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't have said it better. We had that Rex Bundy on months ago, and there were a lot of things he said that I didn't necessarily agree with. But what he did say is that what we have an issue with right now is the worship of self, and that's absolutely true. It's exactly why we are where we are, because the only thing anyone cares about is putting themselves on the pedestal and only doing everything for their own good, their own purposes. What will they get out of everything? And so the worship has gone to the self rather than to a higher power. And if that shift happens, then we have the ability to start worrying about how our actions are impacting those around us and what changes we need to make to do a better job at presenting in the world. Mm-hmm. And so I think, we're starting to see a shift there, and that's amazing. That's a blessing. I hope that it continues, because that is what has led to so many of the problems that we have today. Is there's no one outside of the self for so many of these people, which is why it's so easy to entrap you there. When that is all you're thinking about is yourself, it's easy to make that a prison. And I think that's probably why we are where we are in many, many ways.
Yeah, such a good point. That's a great point. Yep, I think we've touched on it off and on, but maybe we highlighted it a little better tonight. I think there is such an extreme focus on self, particularly in this country, other places around the world, but mostly in this country. It's all self-glamorization, all this, snapping selfies of yourself looking cute and all this. It is so pathetic where we have gone as a society. That is what is valued today. It is so sorry. Nobody's looking out for how do we make things better for the next group. We're all focused on ourselves. And that largely, I think you put it perfectly, that is a significant piece of why we find ourselves in the trouble we are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really do. And I think it's a cycle. The worse it gets, the more we become focused on on us. And we're caught up in that loop right now. So it will take a higher power to break the mass out of that loop. It will. But you made the good point that our job is not to fix that. Our job is just to do the best we can at informing those who want to listen to how we can get out of this, to what we should be paying attention to. So yeah, we covered a lot of good stuff and kind of went down some interesting routes tonight that I don't know if I necessarily foresaw at the beginning of the episode, but that's what we love.
Sure, we do. And, the world's a hectic place out there. Keep your family close, get on your knees and pray. Keep busy making yourself better, making yourself stronger, making yourself more self-sufficient. I think things are going to get a little rocky as a result of this conflict over there. I hope to God we don't have boots on the ground and lose a bunch of young men and women. It's absolutely unnecessary. We're praying that that does not happen. But in the meantime, do the best you can. Form that local group with your neighbors and relatives so that you can support yourselves. Should things get rocky, and hopefully there is no food scarcity and all those things that you're talking about. But only we can take care of our immediate situation. So we need to do what we can to prepare for anything that like that might be coming.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So the last thing that I wanted to touch on, which is not really relevant to any of this, but I think it's equally important just kind of in being informed and protecting your own family and all of that good stuff is, and we talked about it briefly off the show, was everything that's going on with ticks and Lyme disease right now. And I think it's just something that I want to take the time to make people aware of for anyone who listens to this show, who hasn't seen it elsewhere. Pfizer is on its way to be bringing a Lyme disease vaccine to market, which is going through some weird stuff. Sounds like it failed one of the pieces of whatever that vaccine situation is before it comes to market, but apparently this doesn't matter according to the Pfizer people. It doesn't matter if it fails. It happens with vaccines all the time at this stage, and they can still get them through, which is actually concerning in its own right, and maybe we should be looking into that in itself. But sounds like the vaccine should be hitting the market maybe by fall of this year. And at the same time, there are reports all over the country and in parts of Canada that farmers and ranchers are finding boxes of thousands. I mean, I don't even want to think about it. It would make my head spin. It would make me physically ill. Thousands of ticks, just ticks on top of ticks, getting dropped at locations. Why? We don't know. Are they related? I would bet probably. Can I say it for sure? I cannot. But it's really weird timing. Who else would be dropping these boxes? Unknown. We need another problem. Whenever there's a problem, you already know they've had the solution baked into the cake for many years prior. So I think that's what we're seeing here. I'm seeing so many people talk about ticks right now in every capacity about this, about CIA documents being released. I personally am someone who has been on the tick conspiracy train for as long as I can remember. Might be my oldest favorite conspiracy. So happy that this is, gaining some traction, but not super happy with why. What I will say is this is another opportunity where we can educate ourselves and protect ourselves without any other involvement. There are plenty of essential oils, truly, that do an amazing job. I mean, just essential oils and water. You can shake it up in a spray bottle, put it on yourself. You can diffuse it in your home. It does great things. There are bad diseases that come from these things, so make yourself aware that the risk is going to be high, probably for more nefarious reasons, and just some things to research on your own time. So just something I wanted to throw out there because I think it's a really interesting story.
Yeah, it's a great point. We should probably do a little more on that. We should probably work up, a part of a show or all of a show for that. I think many of us would be suspicious that anything that's come out like that, and then there's a vaccine, we would all be suspicious of, or at least the 20% that we're suspicious of the last silly little thing that they put upon us. But I would like to spend a little more time on that topic. Perhaps we could dig into some things a little bit more, particularly interested in, these places that are finding ticks being dumped out there, obviously in an attempt to affect the food supply and or other threats. So I think those of us that are open-minded enough to listen to some of these stories and imagine them to be real to begin with, not just summarily dismiss them, there'll be our 15 to 20% that might be interested in digging into it. But there are threats out there all over, both natural but mostly man-made. Most of the threats that face us as human beings are threats that some other man or group of men and women have come up with. So we need to focus on things, looking at it through that prism, that it's probably something that somebody created to be a hazard to the rest of us. So that's a good point. Maybe we can do a story on that or a show on that in detail.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's a great point to bring up too, is everything is worth looking into further. It is so much better to just dig into the conversations a little bit deeper than writing them off completely. You never know how you're going to be able to protect yourself and your family in doing that. And there's a reason that we say stay vigilant at the end of every episode. You have to be vigilant to these things because they truly are all around you. And the only way that you can stay out of it is if you have a sense of what's going on and stay informed and engaged and participate actively in keeping yourself free in every capacity that you're able to. So that's kind of all I have for the night.
That was perfect. Okay, Bible verse to wrap things up tonight. Fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. And that comes from Hebrews chapter 12, verse 2. I think that one's appropriate for this week. Remember, he is risen, resurrection day, just this past Sunday. We have much to be joyful for, because no matter what the turmoil here is on this earth, we know at the end that we are victorious.
Yeah. Yep, that's exactly right. No matter how bad it gets, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. So we just have to keep our eyes on that.
All right, everybody. Until next week,
stay vigilant. Thank you so much for listening. We really do appreciate the support and truly love getting to share this message with anyone who wants or needs it. The best way for you to support the show is to subscribe, add a rating, and share with everyone you know. You can find us on Instagram, X, and at thefourthbox.com. We'll see you next Thursday at 6 p.m. Stay vigilant.